Hey guys, Jared with Trident Fly Fishing, and today we're going to be tying a hollow fly in a squid flavor. It's a very cool fly. I'm going to start the fly on a monofilament extension where I'm going to add my eyes. It gives it a really cool look and makes it really realistic in the water. We're going to get started right now. Okay, this is one of the reasons I like Regal Vices. I can stick a chunk of monofilament in here and it is really going to hold it, and it allows me to tie on it just like I'm tying on a hook shank. So this is 100 pound. It's actually Rio hard mono. You can use kind of any sort of stiff monofilament or fluorocarbon, whatever you have, and you have to straighten these. So I like to boil them in like a metal straw or something similar, and then let them set in there, and then hit them with cold water, and you should get a relatively straight piece of mono to tie on. So I'm just going to start a thread base here, and I'm going to take some feathers that I've prepped. They're just short, webby feathers that are going to be my kind of tentacles, and I've colored them with a marker. So basically I want them to splay out. Get a better base here. And I'm just going to kind of haphazardly put them on the mono, to tell you the truth. As long as they're kind of splayed out around, the orientation doesn't really matter. Just get them around relatively even, and you'll see. It's kind of hard to tie on mono and get them even, so just slap them on there. Sometimes you gotta twist your thread, get some of the twist out of it. And I know squid have 6 or so tentacles, or 8 or so tentacles, but I only have 6 feathers. I find if you crowd it too much, you lose some of the action. So this is just going to give us the appearance of tentacles and some movement. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to cover these up. At this point, I like to take it out of my vise, and I'll show you. I'm going to spin this around and really tie these down. So just be careful when you do this. I'm going to grab it, and right between my fingers is where I'm going to tie down. So I'm just going to whip that around and tie this down. This is easier than it looks. Alright, so now I got to find my little piece of mono that's in the middle here and get it back into my vise, which is the hard part. Okay, got it. So just going to trim these out here. I'm going to hit this with super glue so nothing goes anywhere. And then the next thing I'm going to do is create a nice base for my eyes to attach. I think this is one of the key features of the fly, is the prominent eyes. So I have some ice dub in UV pink, and I'm just going to dub a little ball right here to attach my eyes to. Mono's kind of hard to dub on, but you just got to get it on there. And you're not going to see this. It's going to be covered by the eyes, so it does not have to be neat. Stabilize my mono here. Tighten this up a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to throw a half hitch in here. And a second one real quick. Okay, going to get my thread out of the way. And I'm going to grab my eyes, and for eyes, I have fish skull living eyes and a 10 millimeter ice. So you get to kind of choose how you want the pupil. I like them pointed back. And you see I'm just going to press that against my dubbing, and that's why we put that there, is to build up a base for it. And you want to make sure these are flat and flush. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is grab some Loon UV fly finish and thick, and I'm going to fill in this space between the eyes. I'm just going to do a relatively light layer first, and then I'll finish it off with another layer or two. Get rid of this. So grab my light, and I'm just going to make my final adjustments to my eyes and just hit this real quick. Okay, so I'm going to continue to fill this in and create a really durable little mask here for my eyes. Work it in there, work it around. Try to get some on my eye here and bring it down. Okay. That looks pretty good. Clean up some of this excess epoxy. Get a couple little low spots I'm just going to fill in. Right in there. And hit it with the light again. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take this out of the vise, and you'll see I got kind of some pretty cool little tentacles going on, and they're a little everywhere, but that's fine. Cool. I'm going to grab a hook, and for a hook I have a Gamakatsu SC15 in 3/0. I'm just going to get that in my vise. I'm going to take a measurement, and how I'm going to measure this is going to be determined. This is going to be a smaller squid. It's going to be determined by my bucktail. I want my bucktail to kind of end up right around my eyes to just create a really good taper. Of bucktail are too long. So my measurement's going to be right about here. So I'm just going to start some thread. Create a base. And make sure this is right on top of the hook shank, and that your eyes are oriented correctly. And because this doesn't have a hook on it or anything, it doesn't have to be tied in the full length. And it's a lot easier to tie hollow style on just a bare hook shank rather than a hook shank with mono on it. So I'm going to cover that up with some super glue and bind it down to the hook. Make sure that's not going anywhere. Cool. So I'm just going to grab my bucktail, and I'm going to use white, and I'm going to kind of color the bucktail with some flash, some pink flash. And it'll give it a subdued color. So when I'm choosing bucktail for this, I like shorter, crinkly, and soft fibers. It can be kind of hard to find, so you got to pick through some tails and find a good one. And I want to keep this pretty sparse. And then this first tie is going to be a standard tie. and then the next subsequent ties are going to be hollow. So 2 or 3 loose wraps, and then I'm going to spread this around best I can. So I'm going to do that with a combination of thread pressure and my fingers. Okay, that looks pretty good, and you can see my bucktail extends. Most of it extends to the eye, and then some is shorter here. I think that's going to give me just the right taper. So I'm going to cover that up, make sure it's tied down really well. Advance my thread, and right here I'm going to tie in my flash, and I have some ice wing and hot pink here. So just going to take a couple of fibers, kind of comb them out with my fingers and break them up a little bit so I get some varied length. And I'm going to tie this in the best I can, 360. Just spread it around with my fingers. Come in with a loose wrap. And then kind of rotate it around the hook and then pull this back. And tie it down. And you can see this is how I'm going to color my fly. A little heavy on top, that's okay. So I'm going to grab some more bucktail from the same bucktail again. So I'm going to take a measurement so that this bucktail here extends just shy of the tips here. And about there. So I'm going to trim it, getting the butts even, and then I'm going to transfer it to my offhand and tie them in. This is going to be my hollow tie. So you notice I tied it reverse. So I've got 2 wraps, 3 wraps, and I'm going to bring this around 360, and that spread really well. So cover up these butts. And then I'm going to bring, this is important, I'm going to bring my thread to this point here, which is referred to as the transition point. And because I'm going to be pushing this back, this needs to be very even around so that I have something to push back against that's level. So I'm going to grab an empty pen case, keep some tension on my thread, pull this back, and at this point I can kind of adjust my fibers, my hair here. You got to really kind of get it where you want it before you start pushing this back. So I'm going to grab everything, continue to comb it back with my fingers, and then bring my thread through at a 90-degree angle and get some wraps in front of this. So you may have to bring your thread down and then bring it up, especially with mono, so that when you create this little cone that's going to push these back, you don't slip. So you'll see, I'll wrap a few, check my taper and my flare, and then come back and wrap some more. So I'm going to get this down a little bit more. Oop, and you see my cone just slipped. So that looks pretty good. Again, when I come back through and soak, I'm going to soak this thing in hot water, and it should get the fibers to lay back even more. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit more ice wing and pink. Just a small chunk. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to break it up in my hands a little bit. And then I'm going to get this the best I can, 360 around the hook. Spin my thread counterclockwise so that it lays back. And then I'm going to spread this out and push this back as well. And then tie that down. It's not really a science to the flash, it's just getting it back. Alrighty, cool. So grab another piece of bucktail. The key with these, I think, is keeping them sparse. So I'm taking my measurement again, and again, I want it to extend to just shy of these bucktail tips. So that looks good. I'm going to trim it to length, and I'm going to come in here, make sure I have a good base. And I really, really try to keep my thread wraps even here so that when I spin it around, they spin nice and even. And then just check it did go 360. Okay. Let's cover these up. You don't have to be too neat. And then I'm going to bring my thread back to this transition point. And I'm going to start pushing these back and spreading them out. Comb everything back, and then bring your thread through. So I like to kind of push here and kind of twist so that I have all the hair laying back and straight and even. Very critical. The more you can manipulate the hair and get it where you want it before you start creating your cone, the better your fly is going to turn out. And feel free to untie it and rewrap it if you have to. Okay. So this cone here is going to be a little looser. It's going to be a smaller cone. And what that's going to do is make this kind of flare just a tiny bit more. This is going to be kind of the thickest part of the squid. This goes too with bait fish, when you use this technique to create bait fish profiles as well. Okay. So grab a little bit more flash. Same stuff, same thing. Break it up in my hand. Spread it out. Make sure there's no tangles in it. And get this 360 around again. Gathering wraps here. And then pull this back. Tie off. Alright, for my last tie, this is going to be my shortest tie. I have some fibers here that I'm going to take another measurement, strip out any kind of really short stuff, even up my butts, and then tie it in again. This to me is the hardest tie too because I'm right up against the eye. You really got to concentrate to make sure this spreads out. And basically here I have to use my fingers a little bit more. And you see it didn't go evenly around. So just adjust it. Take some tension off your thread. Add a little bit of tension and spin it. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So just going to cover up these butts again. And then bring my thread back to that transition point. Keep working the hair back. Alright, that looks pretty good. Just create my cone. A little bit of flare in the bottom. So one thing you can do too is rotate this around and make sure that you're getting even wraps 360. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit more flash just to kind of finish this off. I'm going to use some shorter fibers. It's a little much. Okay. And spread this out. Gotta bring it back. Crowded my hook eye just a tiny bit. That's okay, we still have room. I think the nice thing about these flies too is you do get a really small, clean head. Okay, so I'm just gonna whip finish. Break off my thread. Finish this off with some super glue. Just a bit. All right, guys, that's it. That's the hollow squid. Comment below, and we're going to give this fly away. We'll choose somebody who comments. Let us know what you want us to tie next or what you think of the fly. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're notified of all of our future fly tying videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.